This is the crown jewel, Mr. Good as Gold. This is Connor Hopkins.
I am Eric S. Knight.
And I'm a league champion.
And we are the chosen prodigal sons, and this is the Shotgun Wrestling Radio podcast.
What's up, everybody? It's Leon King here, of course, the baddest of the baddest, and you are now listening to Shotgun Wrestling Radio.
This is Gavin Parker, and you're listening to Shotgun Wrestling Radio.
This is the mechanic Big Beasley, and you are listening to Shotgun Wrestling Radio.
This is your deathmatch daddy Bo guy, and you're watching Shotgun Wrestling Radio.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Shotgun Wrestling Radio. I'm your host, Zach Takis, and tonight we are continuing our Road to the Hall of Fame weekend series as we are being joined by somebody who's been pretty regular at the Hall of Fame weekend here in Waterloo, Iowa, coming up in just about 2 weeks away. We're just 2 weeks away now, folks, from Hall of Fame weekend. I'm talking about the legendary man himself, Mr. Tony Garea, joining me tonight. Tony, thank you very much, man, for joining me. It's a very big honor to have you on the show.
Thank you, Zach. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm down in Florida sweating my backside off here. It was 93 today.
Ooh, we had that last week here in Iowa. It was humid and muggy, and we finally got a chance to get a break from the air here on, I think it was Saturday. We shut the air conditioner off finally. You can finally open the windows back up. And today it feels like fall here. It's about 73 degrees and feels like fall.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so hopefully it'll be a little bit like this when you guys get up here and you can get a break from the Florida heat.
Yeah, that'll be good.
So as I had mentioned before, you know, you've been quite the regular here at the Hall of Fame weekend, and this isn't going to be your first trip down there. What has it been about the weekend for you that makes you like enjoying coming back so often?
Well, it's meeting up with the old timers, which I'm an old timer now. And it's great, to see the likes of Jerry Briscoe and Bob Roop, who, like, I met Jerry in 71 and Bob in 72. So there's a few years, gone by. And then I believe Tito Santana will be there and Arn Anderson. I worked with both of those guys in the WWF for some time. And just a whole bunch of other guys. It's just good to see them, and they're still alive and kicking. So because there's so many of us, popping off, so to speak.
And that is the nice thing about the weekend. Everybody just loves to come back. It's very, everybody that has never been there before always asks, well, what's it like? It's very laid back. And I think everybody just very relaxed and everybody's very approachable, which is a nice thing too.
Yeah, that's very good. I remember a couple of years back, there I go again. I had his name on the tip of my tongue and it's gone, but he was inducted. He was with the UWF. What a great guy. And he made a heck of a speech. I told him he should make a movie about his life. Oh, Ken Shamrock. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I've got an excuse. I'm getting old now, so I can forget things,
No worries, sir. No worries. Now, again, it's just, for getting involved with the whole weekend, what was your earliest memory of hearing about this type of weekend, especially, in all places, Waterloo, Iowa? What was your first memories of coming to Waterloo for the first time?
I didn't know, what to expect, but I think it must be like 6 or 7 years I've been coming down there now. And like I say, got to meet Bob Roop, who I hadn't seen forever, and then Thunderbolt Patterson, he was there. I think last year there was JBL, who I hadn't seen for about 12, 13 years. Just meeting all those guys. And then Barbara Goodish, the wife of, you'll have to help me there.
What Thez, wasn't it?
No, Barbara Goodish was,
I'm drawing a
yeah,
blank too. I know the
yeah,
second we hang up, I'm gonna remember it though.
yeah. Oh, it'll come to me. It just takes a while, you know. And I met Barbara in Australia, I think in 1979. And that's when she met her husband, Frank Goodish, and they got married and she came over here. She's from a little town South Island of New Zealand called Dunedin. So, you know, and we stay in touch.
Now,
So
as long
that's
as you've been in the business for quite some time, you've obviously worked for the WWF. You had a chance to work for both Vince Sr. and Vince Jr. I'd be kind of
Mhm.
remiss here not to ask for a lot of people too that don't really even know what Vince Sr. was like. Now, from your time there, what would you say the biggest difference between working with Vince Sr. and Vince Jr. were over all those years?
Well, yeah, Vince Jr. had an idea, you know, to go worldwide, you know, think big. But Vince Senior, you know, he knew what he had up there in New England, you know, just do the towns, and he pretty much knew how much we were going to draw, you know, with a specific card. And and Vince Senior was absolutely a gentleman's gentleman. You know, when he walked into the room, you know, he was about 6'3", 6'4", in a three-piece suit, you know, his hair, not a hair out of place, and quite a gentleman. And he, you know, we just shook hands when I went up there, and that was the deal, you know, no contracts or anything like that. And he took care of me up there, and you know, I could have been a little more aggressive maybe with my career, but I was happy, you know, like they say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but if you squeak too much, they remove the wheel.
Now, what were some of your memories of when you first met Junior? And obviously, they told you Junior was going to take over the company.
Yeah, well, I met Vince Jr. in 1972 when I done my first TV up there, you know, and it was just the handshake and how you going, and he's about a year older than me, so you know we're around about the same age. And then it wasn't until 84, you know, that he was ready to take over. And I don't know the specifics of it, but I wasn't even sure what was going on. You know, that was the tail end of my career, and I was working with all these big guys that he brought in. They looked good, but they didn't know anything about the professional wrestling business. So I was there protecting myself for 80% of the match, and luckily I got out without being too, you know, scathed. Yeah.
Now, out of all those years that you were in it, that you were an active professional wrestler, or even just as your time as an agent, who were some of the guys that you really loved traveling with just up and down the states?
Oh well, you know, the old timers, Rene Goulet, uh, Jack Lanza, Black Jack Lanza, Chief Jay Strongbow, Sergeant Slaughter. You know, he was
Speaking of
great. You know,
Sarge,
yeah,
he's going to be there this weekend too, or
yeah,
in a
he
couple
is.
weeks
Yeah,
too.
he changed his schedule around to come there.
Oh,
And
good.
then I heard Jerry told me there's a 13, 14 people coming from New Zealand.
Oh,
And
wow.
one of them is a relative of Pat O'Connor,
Okay.
a New Zealander that came over here and became world's champion. And I only met Pat once, and that was at Old Timers Battle Royal Vince put on in New Jersey at the Meadowlands. You know, Lou Thez was there. Actually, I've got a picture, and there was 19 of us in the picture, and there's only 2 of us still
Wow.
standing. Yeah, damn shame.
Wow. Now, you've been around a long time. You've seen a lot. Obviously, you were there for the territory days, and
Mhm.
the older I've got. So I was born. I'll tell my age. I was born in '86. So when I was coming up, the territories were pretty much gone. But the older I've gotten, the more I find the territory days super interesting. I just find that whole time frame just a super interesting time period in wrestling. What was if there was something from the territory days that you wish was still in today's wrestling? What would you like to see in today's wrestling from the territory days?
Well, I think mostly it was like when we traveled, we might go a 300-mile trip, so one person would drive and there'd be three passengers, and then on the way back, we'd talk about our matches, and what we could do to improve them, or if we did something wrong, and we say, well, why the heck did we do that? And I think that was a big thing with traveling. I remember when Mr. Perfect broke in, Kurt Hennig, and he traveled with Rick Martel and myself. And we used to analyze his match on the way back. We wouldn't tell him what he did wrong, but we say, hey, kid,
So I got to stop you
uh,
there because I grew up as a really big Mr. Perfect fan. I absolutely
mm,
loved watching him in the ring, whether it was in the ring or even on commentary. On commentary, he was just
mm.
fantastic. What were some great Mr. Perfect memories that you could share with us?
Oh, hey, you got me there. I know he come and stayed at my place a couple of times, and I had him asleep on the couch. Uh, I think one time he was sleeping early in the morning. We were going to go to the gym, and he was still out of it. So I got some ice, and I put some ice down his back. So when he rolled over, so I went back in my room, and I waited for it. And what the hell is this? But he was a bit of a prankster too. Uh, didn't get me on anything, but and some of them were a little bit. I didn't witness them, so I don't like to talk about. I heard about them, so
Mhm.
unless I seen it, I'm not saying
Right.
anything about it.
Right. Well, I had always heard Owen was a really good prankster too, and
Oh yeah.
I'm sure over your years you got to work with the Hart family quite a bit, especially being at the WWF for all those years. Do you have
Yeah.
any good Owen tales that you could tell us? Did he try to get you at
Well,
all?
there was something he did with Hacksaw in a hotel. He kept calling and saying he was the front desk, and are you going to use the gym? And actually, I think Hacksaw got a little bit upset with the front desk, and then Owen put a lot of thought into these things. He was a classic. It
I've
was
heard Brett. I've
damn
heard
damn
Brett tell a
shame what happened
similar.
to him.
I've heard
Mm,
Brett tell a similar story like that, except Owen would pull that prank on his dad if he knew his dad was staying in the hotel that they were staying at. Owen would call and
mm.
prank his dad in pretty much the same manner there.
uh,
So and I know earlier too you had mentioned Rick Martel. Rick Martel, another guy you have a lot of history with, and he was just another one of those dudes who just had a really great look and great physique growing up, and you guys
mm.
had quite the tag team run there for way back in the day. What are some memories of working with Rick Martel back in the day?
Oh, he was a gem of a guy, and like it was like towards the end we didn't even have to talk to each other about what we were going to do. We'd make a tag, and we knew exactly what was going to happen. And I remember the first time we worked with the Samoans, and talked about the match, and what we would do, and we went in, and we done it. It went we were there to make the match. We weren't there to make ourselves look good individually. It was a tag team match. That's what it was. And nobody took any liberties with anybody in there, and we just had the match. And unfortunately, Sika passed away, and I'm going to the ceremony on Friday and then the funeral on Saturday. So I'm going to see a lot of my Samoan friends up there. I grew up in New Zealand, as you know, and we had a lot of Samoans there. One of my best friends, Frank Williams, and another guy by the name of Jacob Fafua, they were both Samoans, and we were together every time we could be together, drinking beer.
Well, it's just, it's the Samoan dynasty is so interesting. When it was Jacob debuted here last week or the week before, I was sitting there with my wife and watching it. My wife's not the biggest wrestling fan. She followed it when she was younger. She puts up with it because of me. I don't know how, but she does. She looked up and saw him come in. She's like, how many Samoans are there? I'm like, it seems like they're never ending, but I tell you, have you been paying attention to the storylines surrounding them and what's been going on?
No, I haven't. I don't participate in watching the matches anymore. They get me a little bit like, well, why the hell? Why are they doing that? I mean, it's great what they do, but to me, it doesn't mean anything because it doesn't go in. Like, I give you for instance, I worked with Mike Sharp one time, and he put me in a headlock. Took me 8 minutes to get out of the headlock. I done everything to get out of it, before, finally got out of it and made a big comeback. But it was the storylines, that in the ring, the story in the ring. I mean, they do all this stuff that should kill the average guy. Yeah, I give them credit for being able to do it, but Christ. Like, I remember one time in Hamburg, I worked with Stan the Man Stasiak, and he threw me over the top rope. And I used to grab the top rope with my hand to break my fall. Well, he leant on the top rope, and the top rope wasn't there for me to grab it. I actually done a double, I tried again to get it. By this time, I'm falling onto a basketball court, and I tucked and rolled, and I seen stars, and I thought it was going to pass out. And then I got up, and then I got reprimanded after that. Gorilla Monsoon was the agent. He said, "Tony, you took that hell of a bump over the top rope, and you didn't sell it." I said, "Gino," I said, "I thought I was going to pass out. I was trying to keep myself from passing out. That's why I did it." Yeah.
That's I would have never thought of Gorilla as being an agent before, so that's interesting you mentioned that, because for me, Gorilla Monsoon, I put him on my Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling announcers. I always loved the team of him and Bobby Heenan together. I thought those two. I know everybody loves Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler, but I'm like, for me, my childhood was Bobby and Gorilla. I thought those two together were just some of the best, most fun announce team. And I'm able to dabble in commentary a little bit too, and on the local scene here in Iowa, and those are two guys that when I'm watching tape, those are two guys that I really try to look up to.
Yeah, with Gorilla being the straight man.
Yep.
And Gorilla was also part owner of the WWF.
Okay.
If you didn't know that, there was him and Arnold Skoll and another guy, Phil Zacco, and I think Willie Gilzenberg, and of course Vince Sr. had the major share of it.
What are some of your earliest memories of Andre? Because obviously that time you were there, you probably had a few run-ins with Andre over the time.
Oh yeah, well, Andre, I met him just before I came to the States. He came to New Zealand, and he wasn't near the size he was, but
that's hard to imagine.
yeah. He spoke. He was tall, but he wasn't filled out like he got. And Andre and I, we were born in the same year, and I think he was about 4 months older than me. But we had a show at the YMCA in Auckland, New Zealand, and Andre was there. He was working Australia, and he came over New Zealand for a match. And I talked to him. He spoke broken English, and I said, "I'm going to the States. Maybe I'll see you there." He's all right. And then I walked into Philadelphia television, I think in 1974, maybe late 73, and Andre was there. And I walked in the dressing room. I didn't expect him, and he got up and he said, "Hello, Tony." He was there with his manager, Frank Valois, at the time. So I said to him, I said, "How long are you going to be here?" He said, "Oh, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, do a tour." And Vince had signed him up. Vince Sr. had signed him up at that time. I said, "Who are you riding with?" He said, "We don't have any plans." So I said, "Well, ride with me." Like I found out later some of the guys didn't want him in the car because he was so big, but I had a 72 LTD Braun, and he was able to get in the front seat with me and his manager in the back, so we had quite a bit of weight there. Yeah, and let me tell you something, a lot of people don't know, he was a very good bartender. He kept my beers coming.
And I'm sure he could put down a few beers as well.
Oh yeah, I think he done over 100 one night. The cans. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And he probably didn't feel a buzz at all.
Yeah.
And
He probably got a little buzz. I know he tried me one time. He got me a big we went into a bar, and I said, "Andre, I got to go to the bathroom." I went to the bar. He said, "What you drinking, boss?" I said, "Bacardi and Coke." This was back in like 74, and he had this big brandy snifter, and he was watching me. I said, "No, there's no way in hell I'm gonna drink this." I mean, it wasn't even full, but it must have been about 4 shots at least. No way in hell, I'll pass out.
The other
Yeah.
fun thing I want to remind people about too, at the Hall of Fame weekend coming up, there's usually always an Andre exhibit. I think the gentleman's name is Chris, who kind of drives around with the Andre exhibit. And the cool thing is he always brings this big Andre stand up. And I remember standing by it one year, and even just the sheer size of the cardboard, I was like, that is a really tall individual. I think I maybe came up to his waist.
Yeah. Yeah, he was I think he was 7'5", I believe.
Wow.
And then I think when he passed, he was about 500 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is just absolutely crazy. But again, so when you're in the road with the WWF for a long time, obviously you were there for the time Vince Jr. takes over. When you first started hearing ideas for WrestleMania, what was kind of going through your mind? Did you guys think Vince was crazy, or what was running through your head?
No, I thought that was a great idea. I think the first one was in Madison Square Garden.
Yep.
And then they had what did they call it? They had theaters around the country, where they would show it closed circuit. Was it closed circuit?
Yep.
Yeah. So I was asked to go to Springfield, Massachusetts, because that's where they had a closed circuit there, and just represent the WWF there. And then after that, I ran down to New York, where they had a little after the show function at the Rainbow Room in New York. So that was pretty good, and it worked out. I believe it was a bit of a gamble. It's either we're going to make it, or if it doesn't go, it's going to break it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It
Well,
was a
now,
hit on this, but
well,
as you know, it turned out to be a hit.
well, now it's become a 2-night event every year,
Oh
and they're
yeah.
doing it in massive football stadiums. And I,
Mhm.
as an old school fan, I always liked it when it felt like every 10 years they were going back to Madison Square Garden. They did WrestleMania
Yeah.
1 Garden, they did 10, they did 20. I'm
Mm.
like, I would love to see them try that at some point, but WrestleMania has gotten so big. I mean, it's just as
Mm.
big as the Super Bowl at this point.
Yeah, and I think the cities around the
Yep.
big cities, they kind of bid on them,
Yeah.
because it brings so much money there.
Yeah.
People are there for a week. You
Yep.
know, they got the Fan Fest, and then they've got the Hall of Fame, and then the WrestleMania event.
So as we're getting ready to head here to our what I like to call our WrestleMania here in Iowa, because we don't
Mhm.
get a lot of big events like this. So every year I always refer to Hall of Fame weekend as this is our WrestleMania weekend because it is such a fun event. Is there anybody that you haven't really seen in quite some time that you've just from looking at some of the posters and stuff that are out there that you're really excited to meet up and chat up with again? Because again, we got Art Anderson coming this year. Jerry Briscoe is
Mhm.
obviously going to be there this
Yeah,
year. JBL's back there. Both the
yeah.
Killer Bees are going to be there, so I'm excited to see both the Killer Bees back in town for that one.
Yeah, I seen them. I went to St. Louis recently, and they were both there. And I hadn't seen Jim for a long time. I bumped into Brian, once in a while there, but I I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. I'm happy that Sarge is going to be there. You know, because we always had fun. He's got a dry sense of humor like me. So. We get on good. Couple of years back, somebody mentioned my name, and then there was a guy sitting down from me, 2 chairs. He said, "Tony Garea here?" And the guy next to him said, "Yeah." He said, "Where is he?" He said, "Here he is here." And he said, "Tony," he was all excited, and I didn't have a clue who the hell he was. He was Don Kernodle's brother.
Oh,
Because Don
okay.
was supposed to be there and he passed away. So it was good to see him because I remember him from 1980, I think, when I was down in the Carolinas. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun again, folks. It's just 2 weeks away here. The dates, in case you don't know this by now, are July 18th, 19th, and July 20th. And again,
Mhm.
you guys got Tony Schiavone's going to be there this year. Jerry Briscoe, Wes Briscoe, Brian
Mhm.
Blair, Conrad Thompson, Mark Henry, Sergeant Slaughter. I mean, Les Thatcher. I had chatted with Les Thatcher last year, and Les is one of my favorites that we've had on the show. And yeah, even meeting him in person, he was just so full of life, and I was happy to see Les as one of my personal favorites. I'm excited to see again.
Mhm. Yeah, I didn't know Les that much. I heard about him, but I wasn't, we weren't in the same territory, anything, but it was nice to see Mark Henry. I seen him there a couple of years ago. And he's got a young
Yep.
boy, Jacob, doing very well as an amateur, I believe. Yeah, so it'll be damn good, and there'll probably be some surprises there too, like guys will show up that I didn't expect, or which is good.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's always a good weekend. Again, I just love how casual and laid back it is. And
Mm.
one question I do have for you here too is with all the young up and coming wrestlers, I know I do have a lot of local guys that like to listen to the show. If somebody were to come up to you and ask you, what's the one advice you have for somebody like me who's trying to make it in the business? What piece of advice would you give them?
Well, I would I would say watch as many of the old timers matches as you can, like the likes of Pat Patterson, um, Ray Stevens, Sergeant Slaughter, you know, uh, Dory Funk, Jack Briscoe, Jerry Briscoe. Just watch them, sit there and watch them. That's why I believe the Samoan dynasty, that's why those guys are so good. And even when I occasionally watch them, on TV with the WWE, those guys, their timing is fantastic. And although they don't realize it, they've grown up watching it and they've absorbed it. Like I started off with in Florida, me and Bob Orton Jr. virtually started together down there. And I wrestled his father. His father was down there wrestling, and I wrestled Bob's brother, Barry. The only guy I haven't wrestled is Randy, and I don't think he wants any part of me. But those guys, they were good. Barry was good. Randy's the best they have. He's fantastic. And when he first started, he used to have his match, and I'd pull him aside and I'd give him a little advice. It's just you got to watch the little things. The big things will take care of themselves. So that's the advice, to guys that want to get into the business, and give yourself about a year or 18 months, to make it. Like, I only came over here for a year. I had no intentions of staying. That was 52 years ago. And then I went from the wrestling, to behind the scenes, being an agent. I never planned any of that. And then I had what do you call it? No hospitalization, no paid holidays, no sick days, and no retirement, had nothing. We had nothing like that. I talked to one old timer. He was in the business for 27 years, I think. He said his total take-home pay was something like $331,000 over 27 years. And he was a top guy at times. So, it's hard. Like, I've got two boys. I didn't want them in the business. They're tile masons now, and they're both very good at what they do. But, it's a tough business, then on the road 360 days a year, you're, traveling. I think when I got to Florida, I think I was doing 2,200 miles a week.
Wow.
Because we go from Tampa to West Palm on Monday, and then it was either Tampa or Fort Myers on Tuesday, and I was 9 times out of 10 I was in Fort Myers. And then Wednesday we'd go to Miami, which was almost 300 miles, and then Thursday was Jacksonville, and Friday was either Tallahassee or Fort Lauderdale. And then on the weekend, Saturday, they do a shot like Lake Linda or Sarasota or something like that. And,
well, hey, we got just a couple minutes here, and I just really want to say, hey, thank you very much for taking the time tonight to talk to me and talk to us about the Hall of Fame weekend again coming up. Just a couple weeks. If you haven't gotten your tickets yet, please do so. There are all access passes still available. Just go ahead and search out the George Tragos Luthez Facebook page for more information. And yeah, Tony, I just can't help but thank you for all your time, and big thank you to your wife too, because she was the one that helped me set this up, and I want to put her over as much as possible as well. So you got a good one in that one, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it. I'll see you there.
All right, guys. And
I feel quite honored.
Thank you, Tony. Guys, that's going to do it for us here on this episode of Shotgun Wrestling Radio. Until next time, we'll see you right here on the World Wide Web.